Hi, everybody, and welcome to Mondays with Mike. I am Mike. I'm the chief meteorologist here at Fox 26, and I appreciate you joining us on Fox Local or on our other streaming platforms like fox26houston.com, and maybe you're watching this on YouTube. So leave me a like. It makes me feel happy. So I am our meteorologist here. I also do the morning news from 4 to 10 a.m. And as part of our coverage and the stuff that you'll only see on our streaming platforms like this one, I do a weekly webcast. And so that's what this is every Monday at 1 p.m. And we will talk about the forecast coming up, but I want to talk about maybe a possible tropical development. We were talking last week about the chance for a Halloween hurricane. It may not form by Halloween, but there's a pretty good chance we're going to end up with a tropical system in the Caribbean Sea, not in the Gulf, but in the Caribbean Sea coming up by the end of this week. So first of all, we're in October, just on the verge of November, which of course starts on Friday. Where do storms form when we do get them in the month of November? And it's important to note that they're not really common, and they're especially uncommon to make landfall in the United States, although it does happen. We see storms forming in the central Atlantic Ocean, and we also have storms that form here off the east coast of the U.S. There's an important reason for that, and also down here in the Caribbean Sea. So the main reason that we have storms forming out here is that it's fall, and you get cold fronts. And those cold fronts will move through, of course, Houston, move through Florida, and then make their way off the east coast of the U.S. where they will stall. And a lot of times along that stalling boundary, you'll get an area of low pressure developing, and most of the time will be pushed out into the Atlantic Ocean. We also end up with some activity here in the Caribbean Sea because it actually is still warm there. The water temperature is about 85 degrees, 86 degrees, so still very warm. And the rate of shear, meaning the strong winds in the high levels of the atmosphere, are not as pronounced at all most of the time here in the Caribbean Sea. So while it may be just really strong across the Gulf of Mexico, and you'll get these winds blowing aloft at 50 or 60 miles an hour, you just don't really get that in the Caribbean Sea. And so it means if something were to form, it's more likely that it would happen there. And you can actually kind of see that happening here. So we have some thunderstorms down there in the far southern Caribbean Sea. We also have some cloud cover there near the Yucatan, which is experiencing shear, by the way. And this is a perfect example of shear. So the clouds are really being pushed away very quickly, and you could see the speed of the jet stream there. So up here would not be favorable for development, but down here, maybe it would be. And we'll keep an eye on that disturbance for this week because it does look like conditions are favorable, that this thing could kind of get organized a bit slowly but surely. By the way, it's also possible that you get some development there on the Pacific side. Mother Nature doesn't care if it's in the Pacific or the Atlantic. If you have this general area of low pressure and disturbed weather, you can sometimes get a low on the other side of Mexico, or the other side of Central America, I should say, in the Pacific Ocean, and have a development in the Atlantic Ocean sort of tied in with the same general disturbance. So that can happen. So this is the area we're going to watch there. It's north of Costa Rica, north of Panama. Right now, the National Hurricane Center gives it a moderate chance for development, as indicated by this orange area. So between a 40 and 60% chance of becoming at least a tropical depression or a tropical storm within the next 7 days. Is there a chance it could become a hurricane? Yeah. So let me show you this, which is our GFS Futurecast. So the GFS is Global Forecast System. It is NOAA's primary model. It's the American model. And I will share with you what it's showing with us for the system that's in the Caribbean Sea. So we're going to watch it here. This is late in the day on Monday, when we start to notice a little bit of circulation down there, and then letting it progress in time. Now we're into Wednesday, into Thursday, Friday, and then this upcoming weekend. And you'll see here that by Sunday morning, we start to see a pretty vigorous circulation there to the south of Haiti. So there's a pretty good chance that we'll end up with at least a tropical storm. The name, by the way, would be Patty, and it may even become a hurricane, which is not certainly unheard of for the month of November. It does happen. It has happened, in fact, in recent memory. And so this one may pose a threat to the Dominican Republic and to Haiti, and then eventually maybe the Bahamas. We'll see. It also could potentially kind of come up here and kind of spin around for a while in a haphazard sort of manner. So that's something to definitely pay attention to. All right, at the same time, as we're looking for the potential for some Caribbean islands to be affected by a hurricane, our friends over in Florida on the Gulf Coast are still picking up the pieces after Hurricane Helene and Hurricane Milton. Fox's Robert Ray shows us a look at what's happening just off to the south of the Tampa, St. Petersburg area.
This is Bradenton Beach, Florida, south of Tampa on the other side of the bay. And you see these piles that are still on the sides of roads here because of the surge that came in from Hurricane Helene and then Milton. It's been a month since Hurricane Helene and 2 weeks since Milton. And you look in between these two homes here that were destroyed by the water that came in, violent. And at some point, it's tough to tell how much water actually came in. We can have estimates, but you look here, this is, probably 4 or 5 feet ripping the stucco off of this beach home. And then you see the original wood on the side and the gates that were pushed in by all the rushing water in between these structures. And, I want to come over here and show you this as well as Lloyd Alford follows. And it's difficult to move around this, so bear with us. This structure, another one next to it, you see the Gulf of Mexico, the water came from over there, about 100 yards or so. Moved in, boom, pushed up against this home, ripped out the bottom of the home where it was sitting. The sand and the water, there's still some moisture below. There are bugs, the odors, remarkable. You have to experience that in person to understand. And you see all of the activity on the roadway here. And that's what people are going through right now. We are a month after Helene and 2 weeks after Milton. I cannot say this anymore, frankly. What this community is going through, and many communities up and down the Gulf Coast, is incredibly frustrating heartache. First of all, many people have lost their lives, so you can imagine what the families and friends are going through. Secondly, many people have lost their homes. Thirdly, businesses are gone, like the one right here. And people are trying to navigate the insurance highway, and it is unbelievable. And the FEMA paperwork, and that is remarkable in its own way. And then the politics of all of these areas. These are things that are reality. Some people won't be able to rebuild because of, insurance, FEMA, and new code laws that come into play. And so what do? Their nest eggs are here. They've had flood insurance. Some flood insurance is not actually covering these disasters. So all of this is compounding, and yet, as we see right here, you walk up to what used to be a little quaint motel here on the Gulf of Mexico in Bradenton Beach, and you can imagine people with their families checking in, going into the doorway, enjoying, coming out in the morning, sitting on the beach. Well, that's what was, and this is what is. And we hope that in the months and the years to come, all of this has a spectacular comeback, because these are communities we're saving, but the complexities are so intense and so long-term that it's just mind-boggling. So Godspeed to everyone that's going through this 1 month after Hurricane Helene, 2 weeks after Milton. We will continue to report here at Fox Weather the stories of survival and recovery. On Bradenton Beach, I'm Robert Ray, Fox Weather.
Folks, this mountain that you're looking at right now could very well be the tallest spot in this part of Florida. This is Treasure Island, Florida, which is right there in the St. Petersburg area. You have St. Pete Beach, and then just right adjacent to that is this area, Treasure Island. This is sort of the depositing spot. This is where they've been taking all of the just tons upon hundreds of tons of debris that's been collected after both Hurricane Helene and Hurricane Milton. Of course, it caused flooding, and you know the way it is, just like around Houston. You've got to pull all of that stuff out of your house, carpet, padding, the drywall, just anything that got wet gets pulled out. We also had a lot of, trees down there. They had a lot of debris. All of that is being deposited in this location or dropped off like a dump, like a landfill, And then you could see there all of the excavators and everything are just trying to pile it up. Now, where all of this is going to go, I'm not 100% sure, but I'll tell you that it is going to take probably months, literally months, to get all of this deposit into a place where it's safe and where it can, just safely decompose and not cause any mold or mildew or anything hazardous to form in these locations. It's pretty wild to see that this is still going on weeks and weeks and weeks after the landfalls. All right, so switching gears from the tropics and from hurricane recovery, I want to transition to fall and fall weather. Of course, with Halloween right around the corner, the leaves are starting to change. Maybe it's not so obvious in the Houston area since we've been running near record highs every day, but some other parts of the country are seeing some beautiful, beautiful colors as the leaves change and start to fall. Check this out. This is beautiful foliage, or foliage, if you will, from Brooklyn, New York. Now, I'm not really the type of person that likes to spend too much time in Brooklyn, maybe visit for a little bit, but I tell you, this is beautiful. Now, Brooklyn and that area tends to see the peak foliage in late October, and just these beautiful oranges, orange colors and light browns and yellows, just makes for a beautiful view, doesn't it? Our temperatures, or their temperatures, have been getting down into the 40s at night and in the 50s during the day. Now, if Brooklyn isn't your kind of vibe, how about Georgia? So this is a drone view flying over the Stone Mountain, Georgia area, and that is beautiful, isn't it? I've never been there. I would love to go. But those leaves tend to change color and reach their peak from late September through November. So depending on how much cool air they've had, kind of contributes to whether or not they're going to see more. But this is a beautiful view, courtesy of a drone flying over the Stone Mountain area there, where the foliage is definitely starting to bloom. Makes you want to visit. And by the way, I did look it up in the dictionary, and both foliage and foliage are acceptable pronunciations. So tomato, tomato, right? Hey, so speaking of fall, are we going to be running cooler? Are we going to get kind of a cool fall, pattern, or are we looking at warmer weather? What about drier and wetter? Well, I want to show you some maps here from NOAA's Climate Prediction Center. So these are the folks who come out with short-term forecasts like the next 6 to 10 days, which I'll show you here, the next 8 to 14 days, and then they do monthly and even seasonal forecasts, including, you could look at every 3 months, like January through March, March through May, all that kind of stuff. So we'll begin here with a little bit of more short-term outlook heading into November. So this is November the 3rd through the 7th, and you'll see that much of the country is expecting above average temperatures, with the exception of the area just off to the west of the Rocky Mountains. So most of the country here, from Texas and especially back over to the deep south, the mid-south, the Great Lakes, very likely to have above average temperatures for the first week of November. In addition, we're looking for temperatures to be running above normal, along with some drier conditions for much of the country, but not necessarily for us, because it looks like for us here in Houston, we're looking at the combination of warm air and humidity, as opposed to the warm, dry air here across parts of the southern United States and southeastern U.S. So there we are in the green area, indicating a wetter than normal pattern for the next 6 to 10 days, which takes us into early next week. Now we take a look at what's called the 8 to 14 day outlook. So now we're talking about November the 5th through November the 11th. And you'll see here at this point, most of the country is expected to be at or above your average temperatures for this time of the year. And just to put it in some perspective, the average high for Houston, for example, today on this Monday, average high 79. We're looking for a high in the upper 80s. Same thing over the weekend. The average high is about 80. Instead, we hit 90. So close to records. And it looks like that general trend is going to be continuing across the area. As far as the rainfall outlook, it's almost 50-50. This light green area and the fact that we're right on the edge means basically equal chances of being either average or above average on our rainfall. we definitely do need the rain. So even if we were to get some scattered showers and storms, that would be helpful, no doubt. Now we could take a look at the seasonal forecast. So now we're looking at a 3-month outlook for December, January, and February, which, by the way, is known as meteorological winter. You know, winter as far as our orbit around the sun is the point that the sun shines directly on the Tropic of Capricorn, which is 23.5 degrees south. That's our winter time. And, but it doesn't necessarily coincide with a shift in temperatures. December, January, February, on average, those are going to be your 3 coldest months. So that's what we call meteorological winter. And here's the outlook. This is based on the development of a La Nina pattern in the Pacific Ocean. La Nina is a cooler than normal regime there in the equatorial portions of the Pacific Ocean, and it tends to move the jet stream farther north and most of the time keep the cold air bottled up to the north, although there can occasionally be a cold blast within the general warm conditions. Okay, so just keep that in mind. This is the temperature outlook here for the 3-month time span of December, January, and February. And then likewise in La Nina years, we tend to be drier. It's the opposite actually in El Nino winters here in Texas, where we tend to be on average cloudier and kind of drippy and drizzly for much of the winter. During La Ninas, we tend to be a little bit drier, a little bit clearer, and this is the outlook for rain, which is a little bit of a concern because we are under drought conditions pretty widespread around the state of Texas, with a severe drought working its way into our area and a really very serious drought around the San Antonio area. So we desperately need some rain, and we will get some, but it looks like in the longer term, we may still be dealing with some of the rainfall deficits as we head through the remainder of this year and the beginning of next year. Now, moving on to the Halloween forecast, this is just a basic view to remind you of what we're expecting, which is, first of all, it's not going to be a cold Halloween. So that's good. It's not going to be cold for trick-or-treating. The problem is, though, that it may be rainy, or at least it's going to be muddy and wet. We do have a front coming in that I'll show you here in just a moment that looks like it's going to really shake things up and bring us the first rain that we've had in more than a month across much of the area. And so you may be wondering, well, how do I maybe work an umbrella into my costume? Well, our Sally Mack of Wake Up with Sally Mack and Lena fame actually solved this problem a few years ago when she put together a raining cats and dogs costume. You get it? See? She has an umbrella with the cats and dogs coming down on it. Now, you might want to think of something like this. I mean, somebody asks you where you got the idea, maybe just say from Fox 26, especially from Sally. But yeah, all things considered, have we had worse Halloweens? Yeah, definitely. I mean, we've had flooding on some Halloweens, and we've had severe weather on some Halloweens. But yeah, this one with the rain is definitely shaping up to be a bummer. All right, so let's talk more about this Halloween forecast. Will it rain cats and dogs? Probably in a few spots, but what was the rainiest Halloween on record? Well, it was actually not too many years ago. The rainiest was in 2015. Now, that was the rainiest as measured at Bush Intercontinental Airport. It doesn't mean it rained that much everywhere, but 5 inches of rain was a ton and enough to cause some flooding. The warmest on record was 88 degrees. That was back in the year 2004. The coldest day, this isn't the all-time low, but the coldest afternoon high temperature, it only got up to 47 degrees on Halloween 1925. And the snowiest, well, it hasn't snowed on record. At least since we've been keeping records here, we don't know if it's snowing on Halloween in the Houston area. Let's talk about rain and the extent of the rain. So we desperately need rain. We've been talking about this over the last couple of weeks. We haven't had any rain in the month of October. We also didn't really have that much rain going back to the middle part of September. So there are a lot of places that have gone well over a month, maybe 6 weeks, with no rain whatsoever. And we have some coming in. In fact, most of the state of Texas is expecting to see at least some rain here over the next 7 days. So this takes us from today all the way through Sunday. And notice a chance for some heavy rain up around the Dallas-Fort Worth area and maybe lower accumulations here, although this forecast map from the National Weather Service, from NOAA's Weather Prediction Center, certainly could change. We could see them bump these levels up a little bit. This is called QPF, or Quantitative Precipitation Forecast. They may bump this up just a little bit. And by the way, I mean, look, there always could be some isolated amounts higher than this. So what exactly is causing all this? Well, we have an area of low pressure, a dip in the jet stream that's out there in the western part of the United States. So this front is going to be in place there for a while. By the way, also some snow falling in the mountains there. But eventually all this is going to track in our direction, and high pressure that's in place over our area right now is going to give way to lower pressure. So here's what that looks like. Here's our exclusive Fox model. And you'll see here all of the sort of rainy slash at times snowy weather out in the western U.S., snowy at high elevations. And I want to pause this here heading into early Tuesday morning, where we have this wind flow coming up like this. So it's going to be breezy, and it's going to send a lot of very humid air from Texas all the way up into parts of the central United States, as we have that area of low pressure coming in from the west. And then it's going to keep sort of churning and churning all of this Gulf moisture up out of the south. So we're going to stay very humid here as we start to see some spotty showers heading into the day on Wednesday, and then probably a little bit more widespread thunderstorm activity through the day on Wednesday. Now, this is what the Fox model is showing on Halloween itself. Now, can we take this as gospel? Of course not. But it does give us a pretty good idea of what the models are seeing right now as far as the timing is concerned. And the Fox model is actually showing some of these scattered thunderstorms around at 7 p.m. on Thursday on Halloween, staying kind of humid out there too. So at the very least, it's going to be a little bit yucky out there, kind of drippy, dreary. And at worst, there could be some thunderstorms around. So just make sure you're prepared for that. This is a look at the overall outlook for the first few days of November. Once we get past Halloween, a very good chance for rain. That same pattern that begins around the 30th of October and heading into Halloween, that same pattern is going to hang around, where we have the south wind flow, lots and lots of moisture coming up, and most likely meeting up with an almost stationary front that's going to be there. As a result, you'll see the cooler air back here to the west and warmer air here off to the east. And it looks like in between there will be it's just sort of an almost stationary type of separation between the warm and the cool. And along that boundary is where we're going to set the stage for rainy weather with all of the moisture coming in off the Gulf of Mexico. So don't expect really a cool down anytime soon. Even, the only cool down you're going to get is when it's raining. So very warm air for Monday, for Tuesday. Heading into Wednesday, still warm and humid, but we bump up that rain chance at a minimum, some scattered showers. Scattered storms are around for Halloween, and then most likely for the day after. Heading into the weekend, this is the fallback weekend. A 40% rain chance at this point, sort of cautiously. Both days coming up this weekend. We call it the return of Central Standard Time. So we actually spend more of the year in daylight saving time than we do in Central Standard Time. But that's what it is until they change the law. So we will set the clocks back Saturday night. All right. Hey, thanks so much for joining me here for Mondays with Mike. Shout out to my mom and my brother down in Florida. As I mentioned before, so my knees hurt. My brother also hurt his knee. And so, like, in sympathy, my right knee hurts and his right knee hurts. I don't know what's going on with that. I think it's a brotherly thing. But anyway, I'm going to go take a couple of Advil, and I will see you next week on Mondays with